This is Cashology by FNBO, a podcast devoted to the art and science of managing your money. It's like school, but your only homework is living your best financial life. Class is now in session. Hey everyone, welcome to the Cashology Podcast. I'm your host, Juli. Today, think of our guests and I as your ambulance drivers delivering some emergency fund savings tips. I want to start off by letting our listeners know that 4 in 10 adults aren't able to withstand an unexpected $400 emergency, and most Americans can't cover a $1,000 one. So don't feel alone, but do get motivated by the tips we're about to share. Let's meet our guest. Adam Heng has been Director of Product Development and Design and has been with FNBO for over 15 years. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for talking about product development design. That's a little bit of an interesting title. And what I wanted to do is just explain a little bit about what that means. So if I were to break it down, my job and my focus is to achieve our business objectives for our organization by solving the most important customer needs. That's what product development design is all about.
Really cool. Very important job. And we're really happy to have you and learn about emergency savings. Let's start off with diving into what exactly emergency savings is.
Excellent. So before we talk about emergency savings, what I'd like to do is talk about what a financial emergency is, because that definition really is pretty broad. A financial emergency for somebody could be when they experience a bill or an unexpected or out of the norm expense that is different than their normal spending habits. So something like a flat tire or an emergency room deductible, something like that. But it can also be, and maybe more traditionally is defined as something when there's a large disruption of income, maybe for 3 to 6 months or something, and that dollar amount tends to be a lot higher than the other. But the important thing to know is that a financial emergency really can be a wide range of things, and the impacts are both very similar. So when we understand what a financial emergency is when we can now talk about what it means to save for a financial emergency or have set up an emergency savings account for yourself. So much like the definition of a financial emergency savings, what I've found in my research, is also pretty broadly defined. Again, some folks consider it right away as 3 to 6 months of savings of their income from their job, which again can be a significant amount of cash. But on the other hand, it can be just an amount set aside for a sort of a surprise expense that pops up that you're really not ready for. But in both scenarios, the importance of earmarking savings is very crucial. The amount of that savings really can vary depending upon the person and the situation.
I definitely have experienced an emergency event in regards to my car. I definitely don't know a lot about my car. It seems like every time I go to a mechanic for an oil change or to see what that noise is, it always ends up being more money than I anticipated. So in that regard, I think I understand why an emergency savings account is necessary, because the bill always ends up being a lot of money.
Well, you're right. First and foremost, what I would say is that unfortunately, most everybody is going to experience a financial emergency in their lifetime. It just really depends on how large that emergency is. What's alarming to me is that the Financial Health Network's Financial Health Pulse report told me that 40% of Americans don't plan ahead financially. And to me, that's something that is pretty easy to start doing and super important. So even if you don't think it's going to happen to you, you should still work to be as prepared as possible to cover those emergency expenses should the situation arise. One thing I'd like to get out of the way also is that an emergency situation can bring about a lot of feelings. And if you don't have the savings set aside to utilize your own liquid funds, you don't have to feel bad about using credit if that's the option you need to do. Or you shouldn't even feel bad about dipping into your savings. That's what it's there for, and that's what you built it for. But if you are going to have to use loans and you do choose to use a lending option, make sure you explore the options that are right for you and best for you, whether that's calculating what the monthly payment's going to be, what the interest rate is over time, maybe upfront fees you may incur, whatever it is, figure out what loan type might be right for you. And secondly, what I would consider even more important is when you pay for that financial emergency situation, make sure you get back on track as quickly as you possibly can. So pay off that loan, put money into your savings, build that savings back up to the point of where you feel comfortable again.
So, Adam, is there a magic formula that exists? I mean, what percentage of my paycheck should I be putting in a month? Is there a certain dollar amount? What should I do?
Yeah, great question. And if I only had a crystal ball, I think I'd be making a lot more money myself. But no, I don't think there's any specific number that is right. I think that goals need to be personally and situationally specific for you. Don't lose sight necessarily of the fact that goals can be very short term. So if you're having trouble putting away $50 a month, aim for 25. Saving and being prepared for even a $500 emergency can be just as important as saving up for 6 months of income loss. They're both very important and they're both very personal to you. When you think about long-term goals, really take into consideration what your income and expenses are, because your own goal can vary quite widely.
When I think about how I will start an emergency savings fund, I think about the things that I can cut out of my life and what I can live without. There's plenty of times where I'm about to click on a product on Amazon that I think I absolutely need, but in reality, I probably don't. I actually found a stat that the average American spends nearly $18,000 per year on things they don't really need. And at the top of the list is eating out or takeout, which actually wasn't a very surprising stat to see because I'm susceptible to that. Dining out instead of making your own food it's enticing, but sometimes you have to cut back in order to save.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I think the important thing to note there, though, is that nobody is perfect. And we all succumb to our indulgences of our coffees and our Amazon items or what have you. But if we can make a conscious effort to start saving before we start spending on ourselves, that will be a good start.
Yeah. Ultimately, it helps us in the end, just a little bit more long term.
That's right.
So, Adam, you've convinced me I need to start an emergency fund, but where do I start?
Great question. Dovetailing off of what we just talked about, the behaviors we have. Behaviors, what I've found, can mean a lot more than what you actually make as income. It's how you use that money. So whether you are living paycheck to paycheck or whether you're making a large, salary, the importance of establishing a budget and having good behaviors it has the same importance for everyone. One thing I found is according to the Financial Health Network's Balancing Today, Building Tomorrow publication, which I really liked. It talked about how 80% of financially coping respondents said that they keep a close eye on their finances, but they forego written formal budgets in favor of things like alerts or other things that are more reactionary. Alerts are great. They're fantastic for telling you when you're getting low or when something may cause an overdraft. But they tend not to be proactive. So setting a goal, establishing good behaviors, tracking your progress are all number one priorities when it comes to setting up an emergency fund. Secondly, what I would say is the financial space is littered with financial products. There's savings, checkings, money markets, lots of different options for you out there to help put aside your money. But pay attention to products that have low or no minimum balance or low or no fees, or even products that may reward you along the way for your investment. Look to try to get it the most you can out of what you're trying so hard to do. If you're going to be charged for something, what I feel is that you should make sure the value you're getting out of that charge aligns with the price you're being asked to pay. So if you're going to join a club or a membership or, pay a fee of $10 a month to get certain benefits in an account, just make sure that you feel you're getting the value out of that, because that extra, cost could be dollars you could be putting aside into a free type of account that's going to work hard for you as well. There's plenty of low cost and free options out there.
That's a really good point, Adam, because that means there's more opportunity to open accounts where it can potentially be out of sight, out of mind. I know when I see dollars in my savings account, I think that money is accessible to me, right? And I can spend it however I want. But in reality, it's because I'm losing sight of my goals. And if I had a separate savings account where maybe I don't check it as often and I just funnel a percent from my paycheck, that would help me stay focused.
Exactly. Yep. Totally agree.
I think another way that I could potentially save more money is keeping an eye out for potential financial windfalls. I think of my tax return or a raise or a bonus that I get from work, or maybe even the cash back I earn on credit cards. All of those could potentially go straight into savings versus my checking account.
Absolutely. And, I go back to your conversation about, the coffees or the eating out instead of making dinners at home. One of the piece of advice that I like to talk about a lot, and you hear a lot in the industry, is being able to pay yourself first. Paying yourself first just means putting aside money first from your paycheck as if it were like a bill. Whether it's $25, $50, $100, whatever it is, set aside first, then pay your bills. And then after that, you kind of spend what you have left. And you could still do the going out to dinners, the coffees, the splurges you're looking for, but it feels a little bit more controlled than it does when you have a large pot of money and then you're shopping and then you're drinking coffee. And at the end of the day, after all of that, you're saying, well, now I only have $50 to put aside. Whereas if you would reverse the situation and paid yourself first, you maybe would have had $100.
There's also opportunity to get creative in the savings process and to optimize your earning potential. I think back to when I cleaned out my closet in the spring, and I actually sold a lot of clothes. And there are a lot of sites where you can sell your unused items like OfferUp, eBay, Swaps, and even looking on a Facebook Marketplace for items that may be a lower cost than what you can find at a store. I know I did that recently for houseplants. So that was really exciting to find a houseplant for a very small portion of the cost it would have been at a store.
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks, Adam, so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. This was fantastic, Julie. I hope the audience enjoys it and learns a little bit. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. Everyone, all of our listeners, if you want to find more info on savings accounts, go to FNBO.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to keep an eye out for future episodes coming your way soon.